Reverend Fathers, brothers and sisters in Christ. It's past 7 already, and you are not hungry yet. That is not a question, that was a statement. It is notable that the immediate reason why John the Baptist was martyred was the grudge that Herodias had against him, because he was preaching, he was reminding Herod that it was unlawful for him to take Herodias, who was the wife of his brother Philip. So it was about family matters. That was the reason why Herodias had a grudge on John the Baptist. And Herodias finally found that opportunity to silence the man when Herod made a slip of the tongue, made so many promises that he or she pounced on the opportunity to request and maybe perhaps to demand the head of John the Baptist on a platter. You see, even during the time of the Lord and even in olden times, most of the taboos, the prohibitions, are centered on marriage and the conjugal act. And why is this so? Because even during primitive times, the society, communities, clans, and tribes already saw the importance of the relationship between man and woman. And there you can find so many taboos, so many prohibitions. Now, taboos are prohibitions that are not clearly defined and even understood. They're just passed on from one generation to the other. And people adapt them, teach them to their children, even without understanding why. So eventually, the experience of a community which had basis in the past, later on, the basis becomes forgotten and only the taboo remained. Don't do this. But then you ask, why not? The mother would say, basta, ayaw lang. Tuo lang yun. That's the taboo. But sometimes, even if a taboo could be based on an experience or a learning experience by the community, it could also be a structure of domination. And that is why, as societies develop and progress, there is a need to purify certain beliefs so that the structures of domination can be taken out. And what is truly helpful and functional for a community would be retained. Marriage and the family is one such structure in a society, and that it requires a very important structure in society. It's practically the foundation of society, that it requires so many protective taboos. Likewise, some aberrations could also enter into a culture so that structures of domination can become part of those set of taboos, thereby reducing members of the family into servitude. Like, for example, the culture of machismo is always the woman who is subordinate to the man, and the man can do anything that he wants. Say, for example, genital mutilation in some African countries and also elsewhere in the world. There's also the honor killings in some areas in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan, which truly reveal a structure of domination. Although initially it had a point, which is to preserve the family, to preserve marital relations from external intrusions, because marriage and the family are the twin foundations of society. We can see in this taboo, in the taboos, the indications of natural law. Because taboo, although not all taboos are part of natural law, some taboos are actually included in natural law. And in our gospel today, when John the Baptist reminded Herod about the evil that he was doing, marrying his own brother's wife, he was reminding him of the implications of such a relationship. Especially if this is now about power, no? About who will govern. If Herod would have an offspring with Herodias, Herodias would have an offspring with Philip, so everything becomes fuzzy. The succession would not be so clear. But not only that, because this is not just political, this was also dictated by the law of Moses. It is prohibited in the law of Moses. And many of those that are written in the law of Moses are part of natural law, handed down to us even before God gave these laws to Moses. Some of the precepts were already observed by other societies, because again, it really is part of natural law. Now, what is the direction of natural law, especially in our society today, that somehow denigrates anything specific and anything stable, because our value today does not follow anymore what is laid down by natural law, but would favor instead the capacity of human beings to assert their rights. It's a choice between rights assertion and natural law. So that a right is recognized on the basis of the capacity of those in possession of those rights to assert them. But if there's nobody to assert, never mind. An example, the mother can assert her right. The baby in her womb cannot. And so, it is very easy to recognize the right of the mother to her own body and not the right of the child, who cannot rally or make assertions about his or her own right. We can see in the taboo, primitive understanding, and then later on natural law, a better understanding of nature and how we must deal with each other on the basis of my and your own nature. We can see in this development the progress towards the recognition, first of nature and consequently of right. We don't recognize rights first, because rights are founded on nature. The problem is when we recognize the right without recognizing nature. And then you can assert all kinds of rights, even to the point of violating nature. Now, it is admissible, and do not react right away to this. No? Just reflect that natural law can develop. It is not fixed for all time. It is not absolute. So that it is possible that long time ago there was something that was acceptable, but as consciousness and the community progresses and develops over time, the understanding of nature can become more refined, and therefore the laws become better. The precepts of natural law become better, can be fine-tuned. For example, in the Old Testament, having several wives was okay. And you have the example of David and Solomon, Abraham. Well, one wife and then several concubines. But that was not to be accepted later on, no? Especially when the Lord gave a sacramental value to marriage, although marriage preceded the affirmation of the Lord of the sacrament of marriage as a sacrament. So there is a transition, there is a development. But one thing is sure, let us not take the argument that if something can be changed, then it should change. So that's the usual argument. They would say, natural law can change, so it should change. There's an illicit jump there in logic. That's something can change, that's potency. Then it should change, that's necessity. There is no jump between potency and necessity. You cannot make the transition from potency to necessity. So that when we affirm that natural law can change and can develop over time, if today there is debate over one precept or another of natural law, you cannot use the argument that anyway, natural law can change, therefore it should change, because that is a fallacy. Now, what am I driving at? It's simply this. Natural law can develop over time, but it doesn't mean that we have to change it just because it could change. Rather, if ever there are issues, there are debates concerning a particular precept of natural law and its applicability to our present times, we should return to the nature of things, which is the basis of natural law. Instead of using arguments that are not part of the debate, and the transition from potency to necessity is one such argument. It's not part of the debate. It's not the heart of the debate. Whatever the debate is, let us go into the nature of what you are talking about. If you want to change the nature of marriage, let's examine the nature of marriage. If you want to change the nature of the family, do not say, well, it changed before, we can change it now. No, let us go to the nature of the family. Because it is there that we can find the foundation of the precept, no matter if it might be difficult to apply today given our present circumstances, but still, since this is the nature of this particular institution or this particular reality, this nature imposes upon us a particular comportment. Morality, in the end, is care for the nature of things. And there's a common story that can easily illustrate this. A boy was eating a piece of bread, and he was eating as he was walking along the road with his mother. For one reason or another, the bread fell to the ground and rolled into the ditch. He was about to pick it up. The mother said, "No, that's dirty. That's dirty already." The next day, it was reported, the playmates of the boy said, "Huy, you help your lolo. He fell into the ditch." And the boy said, No, it's already dirty. Let him be. See, there's a difference between bread, a piece of bread, and lolos, and everything else. You see, it is when we care and have respect for the nature of things. Nature, not use. Because today we don't think of nature. We just look at how can I use, what's the use of this thing? Nature is more difficult to understand. But once we realize what it is, then we look at it with wonder and awe. Then we take care of it. We are careful, we respect. And this goes the whole gamut of our ethical lives. From the way we treat the earth and everything that is in it, to the way we treat human beings, men, women, and children, even to the way we treat common things, like spoons and forks. Do not use your spoon as an ear cleaner, for example. Very basic. But sometimes we don't do that. Chairs that are not rocking chairs, we rock anyway. When we do not have respect for things, we destroy them. And what if this thing is a person? And we do not respect the nature of the person? We destroy them. It is possible to be ethical without believing in God. In this way, nature, after all, is not revealed by God. It is there. We can read it in the way things are. We have the intelligence to understand. But if we are a believer, if we are believers, there is a huge gap between just looking at things as they are and accepting them as creatures of God. We don't proselytize and you say, no, it's always better if you believe in God because then you look at things differently. It's up to the person. After all, we cannot make people see what we see. But for those of us who believe, there's a huge difference. We can still be ethical even if you don't believe in God. But if our faith tells us that the nature of this thing does not come from anybody's hand, not from chance, not by accident, but it's something that is given with a purpose. And the purpose will always include me as a creature of God. Then my relationship with that thing or that person would be infinitely enriched than if I just look at it as an accident of nature. May the passion of John the Baptist give us a deeper appreciation of the nature of things and the way we treat each other. Not only because the thing is there, the person is present to us, but because each thing, each person, from the vantage perspective of a believer, is always a gift.